encounter.
We're going to launch
It feels very weird.
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined today with Gonzalo.
Hey.
And Kyle.
Hello.
I know I mixed it up this
You did it
week.
the
I
wrong
did
way
it
around.
a different
Yeah.
way
I know,
around this
it-
week. I decided to change it up.
That felt weird.
That's why there
really
was
threw
such a delay. Because I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I was
I didn't
wait,
like that.
what?
I think
My name
in my head.
first?
Okay, look. Confession time. In my head, I got my wires crossed because I was thinking, am I going to come to Gonzalo first for the films? And then obviously I was just doing it on the rails, my usual intro thing, and then I just said your name. But you know what? I'm going to keep you guys like on your feet every week now. And you don't know who I'm going to say. You don't know who I'm going to say.
I
don't
honestly,
like
I'll get over it after the first week. I'll get over it.
Well,
I won't be that, invested.
this. You're a stronger man than me, Kyle.
Well,
Uh,
anyway, on
We
today's
knew that.
episode,
We knew that.
just because to commemorate the release of Cocaine Bear this week, and we've got Creed coming this Friday, we thought we'd just think about our favourite
but
films.
mostly Cocaine Bear.
Mostly
yes.
Cocaine Bear, yes. It is 70s, yes. We thought we'd discuss our favourite films of the 80s, so from all sorts of like pop culture, iconic films to maybe ones you might not have seen or heard of. That probably won't be the case because Gonzalo only knows 2 films, but we will be talking about we will be talking about our favourite films of the 80s, and of course I will have a review for Cocaine Bear at the end of the show. So that will all be in today's
Spoiler.
episode. But yeah, to get started, looking at all the films, I was looking at a bunch of films. All the, like, you know, all these like top 50 films of the 80s. I was looking at different lists and all these articles and just thinking about, oh god, the 80s was a really goddamn good decade for film. And it was also kind of an interesting point in cinematic history because it really was the era where blockbusters became, you know, much more prolific, and, you know, sequels as well became, you know, they became much more rapidly produced, and more of them were released than ever before in the 80s. And that sort of
Like pop film.
pop
became a
film
thing.
was kind of became the big thing in the 80s, which although I think the first sequel was actually something like in 1916, and there was obviously the occasional sequel.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Not until the mid 70s was there really, you know, so many being produced, and then boom, you hit the 80s and it's even bigger. So that's kind of how I guess modern cinema follows closely to this decade of film. Would be correct in
Yeah,
saying.
it's like a very commercialization of film outside the films themselves.
Yeah.
Like in prior decades, you do have a lot of like very genre films. You have a lot of like popcorn cinema,
Yes.
like the type where you make like like we can see back even in like the 30s, like a lot of just like rom-com after rom-com and like very standardized plots and stuff like that. But like it's not up until like the 80s where like it comes from like cinema's not the only like films are not just a product in and of themselves, but they create a line of products around them, and they become like commercial outs like as an IP. Like it's kind of like in the 70s and 80s, it's kind of the birth of the intellectual property as we see it today.
I mean, obviously the birth of Star Wars in 77, and then of course we get Empire Strikes Back in 1980. Really does kind of that push that idea forward, and like the whole Indiana Jones trilogy was in the 80s.
Yes, and I'm not allowed to talk about either of those films today.
Yes, because you talked about them too much, Gonzalo. You did the Empire and the sequels
like those
episode.
films.
You did the Empire and sequels episode. And you did Indiana Jones, and we talked about Spielberg. So I thought, you know, it's best you move on. But we're not going to come.
I've only seen 3 movies, guys. I'm running out.
We're not going to come to you first anyway, because I came to you first last week. So I'm going to come to Kyle first this week, and I'm going to ask what his first choice in today's episode is.
Okay, so my first choice is going to be The Naked Gun. More specifically, the first Naked Gun, so from the Files of Police Squad. So
Yes, from what
This-
we know of Lewis, it's his favorite type of gun.
All right,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Coming from you.
it's so unnecessary, random. Oh my god.
Gonzalo's got it out for me today just because I said you
Okay.
can't do Empire.
yes, I'm very mad at you right now. Really
Can't do
wanted to talk
Empire.
about
Gonzalo's
Empire.
like, this is a sexual
see about
deviant.
that.
That's what I say. No, so yeah, Naked Gun basically is following on from the TV series at the time, Police Squad, follows Sergeant Frank Debron, played by, I believe, is it? Oh no, that's not Liam Neeson. Jesus, Liam Neeson.
Oh no,
That's because
Leslie
that's the new guy,
Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen. Yeah,
Yes.
it's just like, oh, Liam Neeson's playing him.
Liam Neeson.
Oh, they're making a fourth. I didn't know that. Liam Neeson's
Oh,
playing
wow.
him, and I was like,
They're
that's
doing
quite
another
funny.
Naked Gun with
Leslie
Liam Neeson? Oh my God.
Nielsen,
LN.
Leslie
That's
Leslie
one.
Nielsen,
Leslie
and
Nielsen, Liam Neeson.
Nielsen, and
That's
then
pretty funny.
Neeson. That's pretty funny actually. I
They
didn't
definitely
realize
did that on purpose.
Yeah, so basically, it's a kind of like a wee kind of slapstick comedy following this detective. Fair warning, it is slightly outdated as his partner in it is O.J. Simpson.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. But he
Uh,
dies. He
barely in the
dies in the
movie,
very
but
yeah.
first like few minutes. Spoilers, I guess.
Yes.
Well, no, he's
That-
he's in a coma throughout the film.
Yes.
It kind
But-
of makes it sort of funny, like in a very
Yeah,
dark way.
it
Like,
does.
Yeah.
But it's basically it's about Sergeant Frank's trying to track down the killer and everything. And this film, it's just so funny, just
It's ridiculous.
unbelievable. It's on levels with Airplane, like I've talked about before in
Yeah.
the show. Also starring Leslie Nielsen, and I can't get over how much I love this film. I don't particularly love the next two films.
No,
I
those
think
aren't as
they
strong.
I think they kind of do decline.
Mhm.
Do decline of quality, but the amount of kind of slapstick gags this film has, from the start with
Oh
is
my
it
god.
the famous driving kind of scene where it's like the title sequence come and it's following the cop car and it's
Yeah.
just like it goes from on the
Running
roads
through
and then
everything,
it's then in a house up a stairs out of a bathroom. You've got
It's
he
really fun.
obviously
I can only imagine the camera crew in that one with the big like hunk of
Yeah.
car just coming in and out of everything. It's
And then it's-
ridiculous in such a fun
yeah,
way.
you've got the gags with the Queen because obviously
Oh,
the
yeah,
Queen's
that's
in
very
this actually, which is quite funny.
Yes.
You've got
yes.
there's honestly so many lines, and there's a fantastic one where they're in the hospital, and it's like they're over O.J. Simpson's grieving widow. He's in a coma, and then he goes, the sergeant go, "Don't worry, we'll not rest until we find the killer." And he just turns and goes, "So lunch?" And it's just like the perfectly timed
Yeah,
bits of
yeah.
comedy. There's
Yeah.
an amazing
Do you know-
sequence where the car chase and he gets into the back of a learner's car.
Yes, yeah.
And then
that
he's
was very
having to
good.
go, and then it's like this, and then the wee old driver goes to the girl, "Now, Susie, usually you won't be going 50 down the wrong side of a one-way street." And it's the kind of comedy that I don't
Yeah.
think we've seen in a long time.
No. I mean, it's also a spoof
Like,
of like police procedures and popular police
Oh,
crime
100%.
things that were
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Oh, where they've got the you know how they used to do the painted outline of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But then,
yes.
but OJ was found at sea, so it's just this floating
Yeah.
bit of white,
Floating
like
bit, like,
plasticine
yeah,
on the
yeah,
water.
Even the opening of
Yes.
him getting shot and killed is like it's so ridiculous over the top. Like there's like everyone's
Yeah.
unloading like
Yes.
a million bullets,
Talking
and he's just spinning and like hitting.
talking
everything.
about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Basically, so just so you know, like while I was doing my course in storyboarding, they showed that specific intro with the O.J. Simpson getting absolutely murdered over and over again as an example of how over exaggeration is very important in visual
Yeah.
storytelling, because in that sequence he basically he doesn't just get shot and fall off a boat. He gets shot, he burns his hand, he falls face first into a pie. Like he just like gets over and over again until then he gets shot so much that he falls over into the water. It's fantastic, and it's a great like movie to watch just to like see the mixture of wordplay and like slapstick. Like it's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
And you're
Fantastic.
right. It is like against police procedure because they do
Yeah.
follow like everything. They've got that amazing bribe scene. If you remember,
Oh my
it,
god, yes.
where he's like trying to get information. He's like, "How about a 20?" And then the guy goes, "Oh, great." And then it ends up that the guy bribes the police officer back with the same
Yes.
20.
Aye.
And it's like this. It's just a
Yeah, because he's
back
like,
and
wait, are
forth
you bribing a
exchange.
police officer? Oh shit. Here, just give me a 20 and I'll keep it
Uh-huh.
quiet. Okay, no worries.
And it's the same
Yeah,
20 that's going.
I know.
And then obviously you've got Priscilla Presley actually stars alongside him in this
Mhm.
film, which is kind of
Yeah, she's really
uh,
funny in this.
she is really funny. I mean, probably the best line in
Mhm.
this that I
Yeah.
think is the funniest thing ever is when they're like going to get these files and Priscilla Presley's character walks up
Oh yeah.
and it looks like he's just looking up her skirt
Uh-huh.
and he just goes, "Nice beaver."
Yeah.
And then she just hands down
Yeah,
this stuffed
yeah,
beaver.
she literally
just
and
hands
it's
it
like,
down.
"Oh,
Stuffed
thanks, I
beaver.
got it stuffed."
That's a
The
nice
stuffed
beaver.
beaver,
And then
Oh,
just or you can see
Yeah,
oh,
it's
thanks, I got
all
it stuffed
great.
recently.
I just love it. It's just like
Yeah.
they always it's that classic sort of wordplay, like handling what you all the audience expectation of
Yeah.
obviously right how they gonna change my expectation in here, and it's like the scene where I can't remember if he or she says it goes, "You got protection," and then it just cuts and they're in a full body condom.
Oh my
Two-
god, yes, yes.
two
And they
full
just roll
body
around in
condoms.
full size.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans to the giant
the giant packet of
full body
condoms.
Yeah, actually,
Genius.
we were like this movie is so funny. It was used twice during my course by two different lecturers. A second lecturer during our writing lecture used the very cliche scene where they're falling in love as like an example
Yeah.
of that point in like the story structure. Because it's hilarious. They just start falling in love and they go out on dates and they're splashing through the ocean and then bump into another random couple that's doing the slow-mo splashing
Yeah.
into the ocean. It's so hilarious. They get hot dogs and one of them squirts some mustard and it's like oopsie, and then they start squirting mustard over each other and onto the vendor and they're like, ha, 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 ha. This is so fun. Like it really feels like not only a parody of police procedures but like films in general.
Absolutely.
And I can see a lot of the legacy of a film like this in
Mhm.
shows like Archer and
Mhm.
stuff with like the amazing like use of wordplay and cutting from one scene to the next and stuff. Like it's just great stuff. Top Gun, good pick.
It's
Top Gun.
it's
You didn't say Top Gun,
brilliant.
you idiot.
Top
Top
Gun,
Gun.
sorry, Naked Gun.
Imagine this whole
And
take
he's
Gonzalo
not
thought.
actually-
he's
Gonzalo
not
thought we were talking
actually-
about
Top
Top
Gun
Gun.
also.
I remember that in Top
Top
Gun.
Gun
He's
actually
not
also
actually
come out in the
seen it.
80s. It did, didn't it? Like Top Gun also come out in the
Yes,
80s.
yeah,
didn't it?
86.
Yes,
yes,
Top Gun
yes,
came
it
out.
did. Well done.
86,
Yes,
okay,
it
yeah.
did.
We're not talking about that one.
No, we're not talking
Okay.
about Top Gun today.
No,
Unless you have
no.
your pick of the because I'm coming to you now. So, what's your first pick?
Damn it, I forgot what my
Oh
picks were.
my god, this guy is so unprofessional. It's unbelievable.
You just shut down every single pick I
just
had.
said
Which one's
all I
next?
said is
You
you talked about Indiana Jones the other week. Let's not do that again.
Okay, let's talk Ghostbusters.
Here
then.
we go.
A very uncontroversial topic. I'm sure we're not going to get any comments on this. So, the original Ghostbusters, another comedy, another great 80s comedy. I actually had a really good experience because Ghostbusters is one of those movies I kind of grew up watching. And I just assumed everybody had watched and everybody knew like the different jokes on it and stuff. So like it was hilarious, but like I kind of grew up with it. So it wasn't like anything special to me until I decided to sit down one Halloween and watch this with my girlfriend Hannah. She had never watched Ghostbusters. Not only that, but she really didn't know a lot of like the very like what I thought were just like obvious things to know about Ghostbusters. And watching it with her was one of the best experiences ever because she found everything so absolutely hilarious. And especially at the end when like the bad main god bad guy turns into like the giant marshmallow man. She did not know that was a
Oh,
thing
that's
that was
amazing.
going to happen. I know that's incredible. Like the marshmallow man, giant marshmallow man is like the thing from Ghostbusters. She had no clue. You cannot imagine the joy and the laughter that
Yeah.
happened when, and it just like took me back to that moment where like what it must have been for people to watch Ghostbusters for the first time ever in cinemas. So it was a fantastic experience, and
Flashbacks.
it really like elevated my appreciation of this movie because again fantastic comedy. It's a very silly plot with like a very basic kind of like adventure kind of thing where like these like random guys get together to do the thing and no one believes them. They end up being useful and saving the day, but like it's all wrapped up in this kind of workplace comedy style. Like the characters are fucking hilarious. Egan is a standout for me.
Absolutely.
Like his like dry delivery of everything just makes me laugh so much. And like it's just such a good film. Honestly, it stands out as like something that still holds up. And watching it again with like someone who hadn't
Mhm.
seen it at all just really made me realize, hey, this shit really holds water. Like this still works
Oh
today,
yeah,
and it still
absolutely.
works very, very well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is such an interesting choice because it's just
Hmm.
it doesn't really feel like. I actually remember a YouTube video. Basically, this guy was talking about films, and he just goes,
Hmm.
every so he's just talking about every film has a theme and a meaning behind it, and he said and he
Yeah.
just went, every film is about something, and then he just flashes on the screen except Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters. And
Ghostbusters.
ever since he said that, I was like, no,
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is about something. And I'm like, I have no idea what Ghostbusters is about. I have no idea what the meaning behind
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is. And usually that fall, like I said, we were talking about Ant-Man of all films the other week, when I
Oh
said,
yeah.
if your film has no message and no meaning behind it, then it better be entertaining. Either
It better be
it better be
hilarious.
funny, or it better
Yes.
just like be viscerally, or
Yes.
what were you saying, like
Oh yeah.
sensory, entertaining. But
Mhm. Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and Ghostbusters is hilarious, and all the boys in it,
Mm.
all the guys, and Sigourney Weaver, all play with each
Yeah.
other so well, so well. It's so
Yeah.
organic, their
Oh
friendship,
God.
and it feels like they've known each other for years, and they all have very distinct
Yes.
personalities. It's great. Uh-huh.
I love how they bring in the fourth guy like midway through the movie as
Mhm.
well. Like it's such an unstructured kind of
Yeah.
film. Like it
Uh-huh.
really doesn't follow any like hero's journey or any
Mhm.
kind of like normal structure where we see a lot with like a lot of like blockbusters right now, like they are very structured and follow their thing, like Avatar or the Marvel
Mhm.
movies. Like they're very kind of like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do
Yes, yes,
something,
yes.
and like it's just a whole mess. And but it works really well
Yeah.
because like the new character feels like the everyday man,
Mhm.
just like being thrusted into
Yeah.
this weird shit. So like you get all the reactions from him, being like, what the fuck is going on here? What's that? Wait, is that what I think it is? Like it's fantastic. And honestly, the chemistry between all four of them is freaking hilarious. I love the secretary. I don't remember her character's name. She is so funny. Her like very thick Brooklyn
Mhm.
accent just adds so much. The fact that she's got kind of a crash on Egon,
Yeah.
like that scene, like my girlfriend quotes it all the time. When like she's getting the guy from Honey I Shrunk the Kids, like she grabs him and like puts like they're getting him in a cell and stuff, and she's all like, "Oh, you're helping the homeless. You're such a
Yeah.
humanitarian." And Egon just goes like, "I don't even think he's human," and it's just like that kind of like just characterization and delivery. It's
Rick
fantastic.
Moranis
These
as well,
jokes are
isn't
amazing.
it? Who plays
Yes,
Lewis in it? Yeah,
yes, Rick
Mm.
Moranis. Yes, I just know him as the guy from Honey I Shrunk the Kids.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, it's really good. The cast does a really good job, and the practical effects just add so much goofiness
Mhm.
to it. Like the way they used, like even when they do the ghost, they're just a bunch of puppets that are then overlaid with like that semi-transparentness and stuff. Like it really just adds goofiness to an already very funny movie, and I loved it. It's fantastic. It's one of those as a kid. I loved the hell out of it, and then watching it with my
There's a
girlfriend
fair bit.
really
There's a fair bits in
re-sparked
it
that
that are
kind of
just
thing.
like are not for kids though, which is
Yeah.
quite.
Oh no, 100%. It was like back in that day where like the movie wasn't made for kids, but then the toys were marketed
Yeah,
exclusively for kids.
yeah.
Because like you did get like an animated show
Mhm.
specifically for children that came out from this movie. You had all the different like the fact that McDonald's did RoboCop toys, it
Yeah,
just blows
that's
my mind.
bizarre.
Yeah, it's the most 80s like thing
And
ever. But
it
yeah,
really is
great
it is a
movie.
shame that no other sequel or
Hmm.
anything about it has really ever been able to live up to
No,
the
not
heights
really.
Oh,
of
Uh,
that
you
original
don't
film.
yeah.
you don't like Afterlife, Lewis? What the
Yes, I may have
fuck?
mentioned a
You
few
love
We could
times
do
that?
on
a
the show
whole
that I do not like
we could do a
Ghostbusters
whole
Afterlife,
thing on
and I think
Afterlife.
we're
You
getting
jumped
that
with joy in that
we're
film.
getting a sequel to that this year. Am I correct in saying?
Are we actually?
I know.
This
I think
year.
it's this December. I could be wrong. Could be next year. God, I don't want to see it.
Two
Anyway,
wars.
that is one film I do not want to see. But yeah, Ghostbusters. That's a very fun
Yeah.
choice. But I guess
Yeah, we went for two comedies now.
uh,
Bring us down.
I'm not going for a comedy. I'm going for
Yeah.
1982 Ridley Scott's Blade
Hmm.
Runner, which is one of my favorite films ever made. Is that original
Definitely
Blade Runner?
not a comedy.
And I should preface this by saying it's the final cut I'm talking about. I implore everyone not to watch the theatrical cut of this because it has got a terrible narration and do not.
I mean, only watch it if you want to like study it as a like temporal artifact.
Yeah, it's fascinating,
but not for your enjoyment. It's fascinating to see all the things they cut, all the things that they added. It's been said that when Harrison Ford was brought back to do the voiceover for that cut, he purposefully did a terrible job thinking they wouldn't use it.
He's like, I don't want this in the film, and he thought, very rightly so, is like, no, this just this dumbs everything down. It's really patronizing. And that's why the
fact that even like your main actor was like, this is shit. Like even he can recognize like this is not. So even Harrison Ford is like not even trying with that narration.
And it's
like,
because
I was a cop. I didn't really like being a cop.
He was the type of guy that would used to say, it's so. He does sound like he's had a few drinks and then went into the recording booth. And then did it. It's very funny. He's
got a gun behind his head.
It's very very funny. But yeah, that was a really interesting thing because the studio thought like the audience wouldn't like understand what's really going on, even though I don't think it's really super complicated in terms of a plot basis is what's happening. No, it's very strange, that whole sort of inclusion. And then of course the film didn't do very well theatrically and actually was a bomb. Then it became a cult classic. And then over time, the director's cut, then the final cut came out, and then that was like, yes, the definitive edition of this film came out, 25 years later? And then because of the popularity of those, like in DVD sales and so on, they then of course greenlit Blade Runner 2049, which subsequently itself also lost money, because that film was
also one of those rare moments where like I can like I've watched Blade Runner again since 49 came out, and like the sequel is better than the original movie. Like it's one of those.
You think so? I don't think so. I would say I think Blade Runner 2049 is the best.
I think I need to rewatch them again.
Blade Runner 2049 is the best sequel I made, but I wouldn't say. I'd say they're both very, in my opinion, very on par.
I like it definitely more than the first movie. I feel like the first movie, especially now, feels less poignant, and it feels like it has some really, really good scenes, but then it has a lot of just meh throughout it.
Well, I disagree, Gonzalo, and I don't. You're saying it's very less poignant is really ridiculous in my opinion. I think
that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I want to hear your opinions about it.
Right, let me just break down the plot and everything like that. So you got Deckard, who's played by Harrison Ford, is asked by his captain, Captain Bryant, to help hunt down 4 replicants which are, the humanoid androids who have a lifespan of 4 years, who have escaped this off-world colony. And so Deckard, as a Blade Runner, is ordered to hunt them down and kill them. That's put them out. That's the very basic premise of the film. So I will say, along with production designer Lawrence G. Paul, cinematographer Jordan Cronworth, and Douglas Trumbull, who was the special photographic effects supervisor and also a great director in his own right, who helped pioneer a lot of these visual effects, as well as of course director Ridley Scott created this visual masterpiece that proved to be astoundingly influential. I mean, even in the same decade, you had Akira, which came out and was, very, very clearly inspired by Blade Runner, and so many, basically every other futuristic city from 1982 onwards were just like, they got it from Blade Runner.
Absolutely stunning. Yes. Like especially like the miniature work, like the things they did to like really make this world feel something physical and stuff, like it's absolutely incredible.
The use of models and everything,
atmosphere.
It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Of course, you have the score by Vangelis as well, which is one of the best film scores ever produced. It's not only it not only fits the film's aesthetic, creates this whole futuristic and dystopian feeling. It's just,
you can hear it in your head just as soon as you mention the score. Like it's just playing in my hair. Those synths,
beautiful,
so good.
It creates great mood and atmosphere throughout the film. I mean, as all good scores do, as they should. Harrison Ford, of course, is very iconic, and I think Harrison Ford has just this natural star quality where he never really seems to really put in a bad performance. He could just kind of do it. Well, maybe in his later years, but in his prime.
With like, I was going to say he did one with a dog recently that did not get a lot of critical praise, but I haven't seen
apparently he was good in it. It's considering he was acting next to he was acting next to a CGI dog. As like he was 77 years old.
Yes, a guy in all in all fours with a green screen suit on.
That is
Which
chaos.
I want them to release that. I would watch that movie if they do the one without the VFX. I want to see him
I
interacting with
want
the
the
guy in
back.
the
I just
face.
want the behind the scenes with Harrison
Yeah.
Ford just going, "What the fuck is going on?"
That's exactly what it'd be
This
like on
isn't
set.
Just
Like, what
sits
just
am I
the
doing?
entire
incredible as possible.
time.
I'm like, fuck, oh my
But to be honest, most of the credit as well from the art department actually goes to Rutger Hauer
God.
as Roy Batty, who's the film's antagonist, quote unquote antagonist, who acts as this great
Yes.
contrast to Deckard,
He's really good
and
at
he's
this.
genuinely, because of course he is the antagonist in the sense that he's the goal for the protagonist to hunt down and kill, but he's actually
Yeah.
not his
He's the
whole thing is
thematic
that he just
part
literally
of the
wants
thing.
to
Yeah.
be alive. But yeah, adapted from Philip K. Dick's novel, Hampton Francher and David Peoples' scripts deal with these deep existential and philosophical ideas as what it means to be human. How do we recognize the humanity in each other, and what constitutes as human existence, which is really greatly summated in the final conflict between Deckard and Roy Batty. And it's like, can we constitute our soul experiences as human existence and memory, or does it all come down to how people remember us, how is it all just come down to the stories we tell other people and how we're remembered through others? Is that what human existence is?
Yeah, because it's that whole idea of like, are you just human because you are perceived
Uh-huh.
as human,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
is there something else
There
that
has to be something more
differentiates
to it.
humanity from not?
I mean, look,
Yeah,
that's me
yeah.
just
It's
very
that age-old
that's
question.
me scratching
Yeah.
the surface. I mean, they've literally written. There's multiple books actually on the like. There's a whole book by is it Timothy Shannon, who's just literally called the philosophy of Blade Runner. So there's plenty of philosophy. It's very much inspired by a lot of philosophical works. But even in that, and within all that stuff, you also have this whole way in which the human race dehumanizes replicants, and that can obviously be extrapolated into the persecution of many communities throughout history, whether it's like LGBTQ plus or religious groups or those persecuted due to their race or color of their skin. There's so much in this that has actually become timeless. Sadly, actually, those sort of aspects of it have become timeless.
Yeah.
But yeah, just from the note, like from the plot thing, the plot perspective, just the whole mystery of it, I think, so engaging. Just although it isn't like action heavy as some may expect it to be, the whole
No,
thing
it has
feels.
bursts, but it's a very slow movie.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
just like thinking about things and deducing what's happening. Where are these people, replicants, or well, I guess they are people, aren't
Well,
they?
I love the technology in
Enhanced
this movie
technology,
because I
yes.
suspect a bunch of like whenever there's an image they just enhance it, and clearly it's supposed to be some sci-fi
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But I just love the idea that like there was a young writer watching that and later working on like CSI and being like,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah.
definitely like a real
Uh-huh.
thing that we can add on our show.
Mm.
Let's do this. Enhance.
Yeah, but I think a major aspect of the film, which I think is really striking about it, is that it feels like a really lonely film. Like every character in it feels very, alone and isolated. Whether it's because they're persecuted and chased by Blade Runners, or you have this character Sebastian, who's like this sort of a hermit type
Yeah.
character who can't really go outside because of his
Lonesome
condition.
robot maker,
And
yeah.
then he gets some attention from the replicant press, and he just the way he kind of warms up to her, and he feels like, oh, I like finally have someone, and then it's of course like alienated and used by Roy Batty, which is a shame. And yeah, it's just the world itself and the world they've created is so just like confoundingly oppressive and grim and horrible that it's just like, yet also really beautiful by the way it's shot. I mean, the whole when they go to Sebastian's place, Deckard, the way it's lit, it's just this really brilliant dark noir that I just love. And
Oh yeah, this film like is straight out just a sci-fi noir. Like it takes so much from like the filmmaking of like noir. Like I mean, basically the story is about like a sort of renegade cop on his own. His quest gets influenced by this woman who is enchanting to him, and he doesn't know whether she's bad or good.
yes,
Like it's very much like a riff on that idea of the noir, but like taken to the limit. And like you said, it's really curious, and it's a thing that I really like about the world building that it's supposed to be this very overpopulated kind of
Yes,
Earth
yes.
ravaged like climate change and
Hmm.
stuff, where like cities just go down deep into like basically the core. Like it's just like city all the way up, city all the way down,
Yeah.
and it's filled with people. It's filled to the brim with people, and yet, like you said, every single character feels like they're alone.
Hmm.
We don't see any genuine relationships form outside the main protagonist, with this replicant, and like that, even that relationship feels very cold
Hmm.
and
Yes.
distant. Like it feels like we're talking. It's this story about humanity. This story about like talking about like who's
Hmm.
human, who isn't. Like what does it mean to be human? And yet, every character that we're presented doesn't feel
Hmm.
human. None of these
Except
people feel like people,
except Roy
except
Batty, which
for
is
that.
very
Yeah,
much the purpose of the film.
exactly,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
but yeah, I was interested
it's
to
really
hear you
interesting.
say that you think, well, you have problems with this film.
I'm not. This is a no,
Mm.
no, no. This is a
Oh,
fantastic
okay.
movie. I feel like after watching its
Yes.
sequel, I saw it done somehow even better.
Because it
That's
does.
the thing.
Uh
Like
huh.
it tackles different
Uh huh.
themes and it tackles different
Hmm.
ideas, but like for me, it's one of the few exceptions where I think the sequel is something that is more impactful to me than the actual movie. It doesn't mean it's a
No,
bad
no,
movie. It's a great fucking movie.
no.
But like every inch of the sequel for me feels like it's packed with meaning and metaphor,
Well,
and
so's the original. So's the
the first
original.
movie, yes, but not as much as the
I would
sequel for me.
disagree. I
Again,
would
like
disagree.
I'm
Hmm.
splitting hairs here.
Yes.
I'm splitting hairs. Like these are fantastic movies, and I've watched the first Blade Runner like 5 or 6
Mhm.
times at this point. Like I really like this movie. I really enjoy watching this movie. But for me, I just like personally the sequel better. I just hit something that the
Mhm.
original doesn't to me.
Fair enough, and I would agree that in terms of its thematics, I think that's why it's such a great sequel. Is that what it does? Is it expands on those original ideas, but also has a mind of its
Yeah,
own. Like I think the main thing I take
yeah,
away from Blade Runner 2049 is that really it's a film about a man trying to find his purpose, and that's kind of the whole essence of
mm,
Cade's sort of journey. Is that he just wants to be, burdened with some sort of purpose, in which he
yeah.
achieves by the end of
I
that film.
guess I guess like the difference for
Hmm.
me is that Blade Runner is a movie that starts a lot of
Yes.
conversations, whereas its sequel is a movie that manages to have opinions about those
Hmm.
conversations that it just started. Like for me, Blade Runner just opens up a lot
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
discussion,
Yeah.
but doesn't really like tell you what it thinks about any of those
Hmm.
topics. It just like lays them on the
Hmm.
table. Where for like the sequel for me like really goes on to like, hey, these are the things we're talking about. This is some of the themes that we think about these themes and these ideas.
Well, I don't
I
know.
feel like
Like, I
that
feel
is
like it
mainly the
lays
main
them at the
difference
table,
for
but
me.
also when it comes to the conclusion
Mm,
between Roy and Deckard, like Deckard
mm,
is actually inspired by the replicant because of what he
mm.
says and how he's acted and done what he's done in his very short life. Spoilers, I
Yeah.
guess. But there is that whole like, and that's why I love that whole.
Oh no, no,
Uh huh.
that's the best scene of the
Hmm.
film because it is a climax to that idea that it starts. But for me, like the first movie, it introduces a lot of ideas about like climate change, about overpopulation, about even sex work
Yeah.
and dehumanization, and a lot of ideas that it doesn't really say much about. It just introduces
Mhm.
them as like flavors of this
Yes.
world. And for me, it's fantastic because it's great world
Mhm.
building and it makes this world feel very complex and complicated, but it doesn't really focus on those
Mhm.
ideas or develops them a
Well,
lot
that's
throughout.
like a lot
Like,
of good films do that though. They could have multiple
yeah,
themes
yeah.
enfolded within them, and you could look
Oh,
through it and definitely write
100%.
an essay on it. But it's also
Yeah,
dealing
yeah,
with a
yeah,
main
no,
idea,
100%.
which is what it
But
means to be a
you know
human.
how much,
Hmm.
yes, but you know how much I really like films as like
A thesis, yes.
essays,
You can,
basically.
you can.
Yes,
There's an
thesis.
infinite amount of essays you can make out of Blade Runner.
I know, but it's because no,
Uh,
I know, but the film itself, like the only question it really
mm.
develops and focuses on is that of what it means to be human. Like the idea of like, and in a very narrow sense of like memories and
No, there's
experiences, and
also
those
this whole
being the
thing about
things that make
identity
us.
and empathy as well, which is a major aspect of the film. Uh huh. Bro,
Yeah, yeah, no, no,
you
but
need
like,
to. I sorry, it's just because you need to go buy those books about Blade Runner because I reckon all those authors would tell you
yes,
to shut the
forgot.
fuck up. And they'd be like, "There's not just one thing in it; it's very multifaceted." film.
Well, you know why this show is called Unwanted.
Yes.
Uh,
I like how
yeah,
we're having an argument about a film we
yes.
both really like.
We both laugh.
But I'm telling you, you're looking at it wrong. Anyway,
I'm
sorry.
just looking back at us just fighting over how good a film that we both think is fucking excellent is. It's like, well, it's 90% gold. No, actually, it's 90%.5 good, I would say. Yeah, no, yeah, we're
We
splitting
are splitting
hairs at
hairs.
this point, but it's a
I'm glad
fantastic
you like
movie
it. I'm
and
glad you like it. Sorry.
genre defining. I love Blade Runner. I think it's a fantastic film, and it's like influenced a lot of my
Mhm,
likes throughout. Like it's the type of sci-fi I like. You
mhm.
know, like this is what I want.
Yes.
I want exploration of deeper human
Mhm.
themes throughout. Like and God, it's
It's
beautiful. This
beautiful.
movie is
It's
so
timeless.
stunning.
I've also had
Like
this quick note. I remember it's a very weird film. I think a lot of people. I think
yes,
Blade Runner 2049
it's
takes
gonna make you feel uncomfortable.
Blade Runner 2049 kind of it takes away some of the weirdness of that first Blade Runner in a way. If you understand what I'm saying, like
Yes. No, I get what you
there's no
mean. It
like the
doesn't make you
toy
feel less
maker and the
uncomfortable.
dolls and all that weird
Yes.
stuff, and yeah,
Hmm.
I think Blade Runner, the original ones, kind of has moments which are much creepier and stranger than the sequel.
Yes, because
Mhm.
like the worst moments in the sequel are whenever you're in like the big corporation and you see these like androids be birthed and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
executed and stuff like
Mhm,
that stuff really rattles your
mhm.
stomach. But you don't have that
No, no.
throughout the film. Whereas in the first Blade Runner, it really delves deep into these uncomfortable imagery
Mhm.
and these uncomfortable
Yeah.
topics. Even just the way it treats the female replicants in
Yes.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
movie makes me very
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I assume it's meant to say something. I'm sure there's some meaning deriving for it, but it really rattles my stomach because their death scenes are incredibly graphic
Yes.
and incredibly like extended. Like the first one is literally done in slow
Mhm. Mhm.
motion. You see her die slowly over and over again, and then the second one, like god damn, the way she screams and rattles and like you don't get to see the same thing with the other two male
Mhm.
replicants' deaths, but like it's tough to
Yeah.
watch. So yeah, and not to mention that scene with the two protagonists, engaging in what we call lovemaking
Yes.
in a very suspiciously
Yes, I was always
non-consensual way.
questioning that the first time I saw it. I was like,
Yes,
what's
yes.
happening here?
I like to
Mhm,
tell
mhm,
myself they had a conversation about it
mhm.
before the camera started
Yeah.
rolling. Yeah, that is not the best.
But I suppose that whole sort of you can extrapolate that towards sort of abuse of sort of power and sort of from the male
Hmm.
point of view, and also
Oh
replicants
yeah.
aren't treated like human beings or like respected, and you can
Hmm.
also extrapolate that towards something like misogyny and sexism, which is
100%,
pretty much
100%.
I
It's
think what
like
he's getting at with that stuff.
yes,
Yes.
like that's the thing. Like the problem as well is that like obviously Harrison Ford's character is treated as the protagonist and
Hmm.
the driving force, but it's interesting to think that maybe like scenes like that and later on when like the last replicant is dying like makes you question whether like the
Hmm.
morality of the person you were
Yeah.
following and stuff. And I get that's also like a very noir
Hmm.
topic, like the idea of like the cop and protagonist kind of like being like the detective that's kind of gray
Yes.
who does some horrible
Very
things
questionable
but
man.
also some
Yes.
slightly good things. Yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, look,
So
that
yeah,
is
no,
Blade Runner.
there's things to
I
love
just
about
thought
it.
I'd get that weird thing
Great
out
movie,
here
sorry.
because I remember my friend,
I was just like, shut the
you know,
fuck up already.
my friend Jesus
I'm
watched
just
Blade
sitting
Runner
back.
after he saw 2049, like a couple of years after he saw
Oh
2049,
god.
he watched Blade Runner, and that was one
Yeah.
of the first things he came out of it. He was like, "It's
Hmm.
so different to that film," and he said it's a much
Hmm.
weirder film, and I was just like, "Yeah, that popped into my head." I
Yes, yes.
remember having that conversation with him. It's a very weird
Which
film.
is a very 80s
Yes.
thing to do. Like,
It's
if you
it's
look
like
at
it's a different
80s
film.
movies, yeah, like we could do some honorable
Oh, we
mentions
are
here
about to. I
because,
was
like,
about to
there's
ask
80s
Kyle. I was
movies.
about to ask Kyle. Yeah.
Yeah,
So Kyle, what are your honorable mentions before your main pick? Sorry.
yes.
Oh, sorry, I just woke up from a nap. My honorable
Uh,
mentions, right? Well, I would have to say,
hmm.
probably got Dead Poet Society.
Oh,
Really
very
enjoyed
good
that.
choice.
Oh,
Very good.
yes, very great
The
movie.
the Lost Boys.
I've never seen The Lost Boys. You know that?
Ooh, I had to
I
read the
I
book and watch the film for class. That is a traumatizing experience.
yeah, it's a good
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy war games. Gonna have to
Hmm.
give that a shout out. That was a
Mm,
childhood favorite of mine,
yeah.
and um, I had one else in my head, and it's gone out. I'll just for sake, I'll just say Indiana Jones just to really piss off the Paolo, just because I can
God
say it,
damn it!
because I've never
God
talked
damn
about
it!
it.
Fair
God
enough.
damn
Fair
it.
enough. Right,
Oh,
Kyle.
man.
What is your main choice today then?
Right, okay, so my second main choice is gonna
Yeah.
be Back to the Future.
Iconic,
Aha!
classic.
But
Right.
the first one came out in the 70s.
No, it didn't. It came in 1985. You fool.
No, it didn't.
What? Damn it! Google lied to me.
Oh
I
my
was like,
God,
I
it
can't
was
do
the-
Back
it
Google
was
to
the-
the
lied to
Future.
you. What are
It's
you
in the
talking
70s.
about? It's in the in the
Yes.
film. They're in 1985. It's the whole point. They go back 30.
I
Oh.
looked it up and it said 79 and I was like, really? I thought that was an 85
What did you?
movie.
No,
Oh
no,
well,
no.
I guess I can't do
You
Back
need to
the
share
Future.
your. I need to know exactly what you googled. You did not type in when did Back to the
I
Future come
googled
out
it.
because it came out in 1985.
No, I didn't. I tapped out Back to the Future. It said 79 for some reason. Back to the Future.
Okay,
Anyway, Kyle, you.
Right.
I'll
Well-
send you the screenshot. Don't
Right,
worry.
Kyle, on you go. Carry on.
but maybe it was like Robert Zemeckis started thinking about the film in 1979 and Gonzalo's gone, that's when it was
Yeah.
released. Yeah, so obviously
no,
Back
it's-
to the Future.
Yeah, it's 85. You're right. No, I don't know why I
Of
saw
course
it
we're right.
79.
Don't
Oh, you're right.
question it. Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's
like,
I generally
Gaval's
I generally
actually
thought it was
gone on to
79.
Wikipedia and just changed it.
It's
He's
so-
just
I
gone on
was
and
like to the point where I was actually gonna come here and tell you guys that I didn't think like I was surprised how much time had passed since the first movie and the second one. Like that's how like much I believe.
But you don't
I saw
remember
79.
just
I
watch
was
the
like,
film and be
damn.
like, oh yeah, 1985 is like the whole. It's
I
literally the
don't-
date
I
is in
don't
the film,
register
or like
numbers. I don't
just how
register
80s.
numbers.
Right,
Huey
Come
Lewis
on,
in the
you
well-
news,
guys know
please.
me.
Sorry, carry on, Kyle.
I can't deal with
I
this
know.
thing. It's an unhealthy work environment. So, right, Back to the Future, obviously, probably
Yes.
one of the most well-known sci-fi series
Yes,
ever.
absolutely.
Starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd as Marty and Doc.
Yes.
And yeah, the first one is I mean, the trilogy as a whole I enjoy. I think for me it's one of those ones that starts up at top and then kind of decreases with
Yes,
quality as it goes
uh,
on.
I have problems with
Yeah.
the sequels. I think
You know-
a lot of people do. I don't actually
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they're that good.
Yeah.
And I
I-
think the first one is
I
fantastic.
think
Hmm.
yeah,
We could have brought
I
these,
enjoy
like,
the
these two
second
last
one.
ones. Yeah.
I enjoy the second one for like the quirky futuristic
Yeah.
technologies, like the
Hmm.
self-lacing
Hmm.
stuff, the,
Not for the plot.
rehydrating pizza,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
And then honestly,
Weird Donald Trump.
This is quite-
feature
Yes,
with
which-
Biff.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fun
Yeah.
too.
I honestly don't know if I've watched the third one completely
Oh man, see,
because I think
could have,
I've
I could have
gotten
talked
bored
about this
halfway
one.
through.
Oh, I think I could have talked about this one in the movies we changed our
Mhm.
minds on because this was one I loved as a kid. I loved the third Back to the Future.
Well,
As a
luckily
kid,
that
I
was
thought
last
it's-
week. So anyway,
Yes,
Yeah,
but
or was
yeah,
you
it's
right
not good.
there?
It's not good.
I'm gonna just stop you in your
Wow.
tracks. So because that was last week's topic, not this week's. So yeah. Basically, yeah, no, so obviously it's the story of Marty McFly is
Yes.
friends with Doc Brown and he gets stuck in this DeLorean after Doc Brown is seemingly killed by terrorists, and as you do in a car
Yep.
park, and
Yeah,
he goes
you know,
back
'cause
to
he stole uranium from them.
1955.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where were the
And he goes
terrorists
back to
from?
19...
Libya?
I don't know.
No?
Libyan? Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't
something
remember.
like that. They were Middle Eastern.
Maybe
That was before
Doesn't matter.
the 9/11, so
It
it's
just-
interesting.
it just no. That's not really important to the plot, Gonzalo.
I know it's
Um,
not, it's just that.
What is important to the plot is the time, which obviously you got confused about.
Go
So
back to the past.
yeah, so he
and
goes
future,
back-
It doesn't matter.
yes, he goes back to 1955, where he's basically trying to convince Doc Brown
Hmm.
that he's from the past, and he then has to basically ensure that his mum and dad get together so that he's born, and it's all these kind of hijinks, and it's just really good because obviously you've got the. So that it was an interesting development, this movie, actually, because they struggled for a while to kind of get the ball rolling on this project because not many studios were kind of jumping for it. Famously,
Oh, wow.
Disney turned it down because it didn't like the idea that that his mum would flirt with him. And they were like, "That's very anti us. We're not gonna do that.
I
we're not
mean,
gonna have. We're not gonna have
Understandable,
weird."
though.
Yeah, understandable.
Yes.
And obviously, casting wise, technically, Michael J. Fox wasn't the first person to play Marty.
No.
Yes,
It was
that's true.
Eric Stoltz. Stoltz.
Did they
I think
did
is
they
that? Yeah.
reshoot the movie or something?
They shot
Well,
parts
right.
of the movie.
They did like a few weeks with
Hmm.
Eric. Like he did a lot of the primary filming, and then they just felt it didn't work, and then so they started filming with Eric in November, and then by January, Michael was in the role. So literally only a couple of weeks, and then they quickly switched everything around.
Yeah, because we have some like we still have recovered footage of like some of the scenes, like the diner scene.
Yeah,
when he
and
meets
it's
his dad and
weird
things like
because
that,
when you see it, you're like Marty.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox was such a better choice. Like
Yeah.
even just in the resemblance he has to the other actors, especially the one who's playing the younger version of his father. But apparently it was hell for Michael J. Fox because he was still filming Family Ties.
Yes, because that was the thing.
So
Like, he had to like sign a contract where like the time was very weird, the times they were allowed to shoot, because he had like that commitment
Yeah, and
to this show.
Family
Yeah.
Ties was one of the shows that were like shot in front of a live audience, so he had to
yes.
literally be there. Apparently, I was reading up on it. He was like, he used to get lifted into bed by like studio execs or
Yes,
something like
yes.
that, because he was
Yeah,
so
because he
out
was
of it.
basically finished like shooting a show and then go to shoot a movie
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
not sleep and
And
shoot
then
the
he'd
show
be
and then the
dead.
movie. Yeah,
Um,
understand.
And obviously, yeah. So obviously, we've got one of the most famous things about the movie is the time machine itself, the DeLorean.
Yes. A
Yes.
terrible car.
As
That's the thing.
well, it was known to be quite
Yeah.
bad at the time.
Yes,
And
that's the
but
fun
obviously
thing. It
now
was
it's
supposed to
probably
be a
one of the most
joke.
popular cars
Yeah,
ever.
exactly.
You know, the irony of that, and they're bringing out a
Yeah.
new DeLorean,
Oh, man.
like in a year or two, which is just silly.
It's hilarious
Um,
because like they literally chose the DeLorean as like a joke for like we chose the crappiest car that we could think about, and now it's like the movie became so famous, people like pay so much for like DeLoreans and convert them into like the time machine and stuff. Like, damn, it's one of those weird
It's
like anti-product placement things that ended up being a product
uh-huh.
placement.
I mean, and very interestingly, to
Yeah.
tie back to Lewis's thing. So obviously, a bunch of people were brought on, to work on the kind of design and the kind of construction of turning the DeLorean into this time machine.
Yes.
And a few of the people had worked on Blade Runner,
Oh,
like the
wow.
previous couple of
Ah.
years before, on the design of those
Oh,
cars.
there you go.
Interesting.
And they were brought in, and obviously it was slightly different in technology wise, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but
and
it
I
makes
mean,
sense because it has a lot of greebling as well, and like a ton of like different sci-fi accents and stuff. So yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
I mean, it was a commercial and financial success in the 80s,
Yes.
which obviously led off to have two sequels, which I believe did they film the first two back to back, or did
it not?
was
think
it what
the
85,
second
86?
two- I think the
Was it the
second two were
second
filmed
two?
back to back. I think like it was like it wasn't thought of as like they didn't plan to do more sequels after the first one, and then the second two were
I'm
shot
trying to
back to
think. What
back.
was the second one? Second one I think was 89, and then the third one was 90. So they must have
Was
shot
it
those two back
1990
to back.
that late? I always considered them all in the 80s. That's strange.
I might
Well,
be wrong, as I usually am.
Yes, you are, because you could said it was in the
Yes.
70s.
It's one of the most.
I,
So-
I
just the
used
most.
Just before
No,
you
I
say
thought the
anything,
sequels. I thought the sequels were in the 80s, and the first one was like at the edge of the 70s. Again, I don't know. I
so
just
Back to the
misread
Future
it
Part
this
Two
morning.
is
Kyle, but for you,
89.
sorry, for you personally, why is it you love Back to the Future so much?
I don't know. It's just I enjoy. I don't know. I just don't know why. I just
I don't
decided.
know. I don't know.
No, I love the kind of fun kind of adventure.
Oh,
Like it's a
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the first one is really a nice self-contained
Mhm.
adventure. You know,
Yeah.
nice sci-fi elements with the time travel, which I do love.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think both Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are just incredible
Yeah,
in their
absolutely.
role.
Yeah.
Their
Iconic.
chemistry
So fun.
between them is actually
So good.
really good. I love the kind of wee jokes that they put in with the kind of like
Mm.
the kind of changing in the times. when it's like if it's
Yeah.
like Marty joking to his Uncle Joe that he's like, get used to being in these
Yeah.
bars, he's a little toddler, and he's like, you know,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
his mum thinking his name's Calvin Klein because that's what he's got wrapped around his
His
boxers.
underwear, yeah.
You know, and it's great. It's just such a great
It's a
time.
good time.
And if you think about it, it's just one film. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yes, I would
And
say
obviously, the director will
everybody's
not let
yeah.
any remakes happen until he's
Yeah.
dead. So
Yeah.
hopefully,
I mean,
if
That's
we
good
keep
though.
him
You
alive
can't-
for another 20
You
years.
can't really forget just.
What's the point of remaking this though? Like,
I mean,
no,
yeah.
it just works.
Money.
I don't think you need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Um,
I'm being naive.
you can't.
on
You
purpose.
can't. Look. Okay. I love Back to the Future as well, but see when you do think about it, it is pretty fucked up, right?
It's really
it's
fucked
pretty
up.
fucked up.
Yeah.
His mum
of
falling
course.
in love with, becoming infatuated with her son.
I mean, first of all, the reason she fell in love with her dad in the first place is because he was a peeping Tom.
Yeah, and he rescued
That
her
was,
from a
like, just,
car.
like-
Yeah.
Yeah, which was an accident because he was literally spying on her
Yeah.
with binoculars, which is like the creepiest shit ever. Which is great because the actor really
I
sells
mean,
the
Yeah.
creepiness.
it's not perfect.
No, I know,
You
no, but
know?
I
Yeah.
think it is pretty perfect. I love that film.
Can't deny that.
Although,
Oh, it works.
it works.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's
like
very.
it works within
I'm
the
just
film.
saying.
Like that's the thing. Like within the film, it works perfectly.
I'm
fine.
just saying,
It's just if you
If
take it out.
I wrote Back to
Yeah.
the Future, right, and I went to a Hollywood pitch meeting and pitched that today, I think studio execs would be
Yes.
like, "No, that's too fucked up," and like
Yes,
some
100%.
Yeah,
weird
oh,
ass
yeah, yeah,
Freudian
You would get the Disney
shit.
reaction.
So don't do
It-
it.
100%.
It would be interesting that if they do remake this in like 20 years' time.
I don't think they remake
do
it. I think they
with that,
they'd reboot it. I think
They'll
you could.
reboot it.
I think
Yeah,
you
they'll
could
do some,
easily
like-
do this with like Marty McFly's son or like grandson now,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
have them do it, and
100%.
him going back to 1985.
I mean,
And
obviously,
then-
you wouldn't.
Then they'll do some like weird like CGI thing where they're like, oh yeah, we deep faked this actor so they could be in the background of this scene, so then they could see like, yeah.
That was a
they'll
very
do some
weird way
shit
to go
like
with that,
which, by the
Gonzalo.
way-
but okay.
No, they would 100% do that. They would like deep fake the older
Yeah,
actors and
so-
be like, oh, Marty McFly meets his grandfather and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like, but we deep faked this specific guy to do
I
this
I
and
don't know.
stuff.
I don't think Michael
100%.
J. Fox would be health wise be able to go anywhere near a
Yeah.
film set.
But,
I don't know. That's my reason that I don't think they'll reboot
Yeah.
it. Because I don't
I
think they'll
hope they
reboot it
don't. I
without
don't
Michael
think-
J. Fox.
Yeah, like we neither of us want this to be
Yeah.
rebooted or anything, but like it is like a thought experiment. It would be interesting.
No, I would take a
real story
reboot
would
over a
do this.
remake, but I
Mm.
think because of the health, I
Mm.
don't
Yeah.
think they'll do a reboot,
Mm.
and that's why I think they will do a
I see, I
remake,
see.
which I don't.
Well, yeah,
want.
look,
Okay.
I love the score as well. The score is very iconic. The very, like you're saying, the adventure quality. It's so unique.
This twinkle.
It's just a great time. I
Yeah.
love Back to the Future, and it's a great fun time.
Mm.
I agree, Kyle.
It's
It's absolutely one of the best of the 80s.
Very quotable
Very
movie as well.
quotable too, yeah.
Ronald Reagan, the actor.
Yeah, that's very good. Right, Gonzalo, any honourable mentions before your second choice?
Yes. Okay. So just because you mentioned some childhood favorites, I want to mention how I really liked the Ethan Hawke movie Explorers as a
All
kid.
right, okay.
I haven't seen it then. It might be terrible,
Yeah.
but as a kid, I loved the shit out of that movie. Then we mentioned the main actor of this one, Little Shop of Horrors. Great musical, great stuff.
Ah, fucking
Rick
love
Moranis,
Little Shop of
yeah.
Horrors.
So fun, so fun, so fun. I love how they changed the ending because the audiences didn't like the apocalyptic ending.
The
so they
Americans
had-
would cry.
oh my god,
Bitches.
they had this shot of them in like this suburbia that looked so much like Blue Velvet in like
Oh,
such an
really?
unsettling way.
Mm.
Like, oh my god, it was horrible. But yeah,
Well, like,
watch
they,
the one
like,
where they all
yeah.
die at the end.
Brilliant.
Then more puppets, Labyrinth, great stuff. Love the puppet work in that
Yeah.
one. Muppets Take Manhattan, another classic. The Great Muppet Caper, good year for Muppet movies. Good decade for
Decade,
Muppet movies. Then Princess Bride, not allowed to talk about that one.
You already
so
talked about
I
it,
won't. My girlfriend's favorite movie, Kiki's Delivery Service, also came out this year, this decade. good adventure movies, Romancing the
I
Stone.
love
I think
Romancing the Stone. I
both.
love Romancing the Stone so much.
I-
Yeah, I think
If you're
both
gonna
of them
watch a
came out
Michael
this year.
Douglas film this week and you don't watch Ant-Man, watch Romancing the
Yes,
Stone.
watch
It's on Disney
Romancing the Stone.
Plus. Watch it.
Yes,
I like
yes.
ants. I like ants.
Goonies also came out in the
Forgot
80s.
about
Like
Goonies.
we see, yeah, Gremlins
Oh,
also
okay.
came out in the 80s. Like we have so many good ones.
I'm honestly
Evil and
impressed Gonzalo's
yes.
not just gone like, oh, Singing in the Rain, Psycho, The Avengers, all great 80s
Yeah,
films. I just love
fantastic.
all
I'm
of them.
surprised you got all those dates correct with this. What you're saying,
I
Gonzalo, but-
checked the dates, okay? My Back to the Future was an outlier because I wanted to do Back to the Future, and then I was like, oh shit, no, because I don't want to do the second one. I don't like the second one that much. So yeah. Anyways, Evil Under the Sun. That's a weird
Aye.
Agatha Christie movie that I watched a lot as a kid, and I haven't seen since. It might be horrible right now. I tried rewatching Murder on the Nile, and that was fucking horrendous. So like they very clearly just discovered how to use the zoom lens and they
You
just
love the
used the
zoom.
shit
You love
out
the
of
zoom.
it. Oh my god, it was horrendous. But yeah, but like Murder Under the Sun was one that like I like kind of grew up watching a lot of these like Agatha Christie adaptation stuff. It's one of those. I was like, yeah, this was a fun one. Haven't seen it since. Might be terrible, so
Right.
don't
So,
take my
what
word
is
for it.
your final pick?
But the one I'm talking about is The Shining.
Yes. The Shining.
So yes, classic horror movie. Stanley Kubrick. It was 1980 exactly. So like just at the start, I think. Let me check.
No, it's
I might
80. I
have
think
played
it's
wrong
80.
again.
He's like, we're
I think
okay,
it's
Okay,
we're okay, we're
1980.
okay.
Okay. Don't want to get belittled again. But yes, so The Shining. It's a fantastic movie. It's based on a book, as you know, that it has very little to do with the
Yes.
original book.
One that
Like,
Stephen King absolutely
it's a
hates.
very lucid. Yes,
And I've
it's a
read,
very
I've
loose
read The
adaptation of
Shining, and
Stephen King's book.
it is quite
Mm.
different. It is quite different.
Very,
Although
very
there's elements
different.
of the book that I
But
actually think they could have put in the film,
Hmm.
and it would have added like some great scenes, some really creepy
yes,
things.
but
But
let's agree
nonetheless,
that
it's
hedge
great.
monsters aren't
Hedge
scary.
monsters aren't scary. No.
They're unscary. So
Good work, Kubrick, on removing
yeah,
that. Yes.
yeah. No, it's interesting because it's a very, very loose adaptation, and the book's like overall narrative is also very different because this movie essentially it's about abuse.
Yes.
It's about an abusive father and an abusive husband, and like it's really well done. Like the original one was obviously about like corruption because the dad wasn't a bad
Yeah.
guy. He actually like at the end of the book, spoilers I guess, sacrifices himself to like save them and stuff, and like a big explosion and whatever. And so like he has like a redeeming moment and things like that. Whereas here, with by the way, a fantastic casting choice with
Jack Nicholson.
what's his name? Thank you, the Joker. So yeah, no, with Jack Nicholson, he does a fantastic job of seeming like someone who's like already hiding some shit under the surface from the
Absolutely.
very start. The way he treats and talks about his son and his wife from the start seems slightly suspicious, and it gets worse once you rewatch the movies. And you can see that obviously he's a very abusive father figure to his son and a very abusive husband. And the idea that the hotel corrupts him is like questionable.
Hmm.
And that's what I love about this movie because it does have a lot of like elements about like, yeah, it's the paranormal and stuff like that, but it makes you question whether that is even
Yes.
happening, that is even real, or if it's just an expression of this man
Going
like
insane.
giving in to his already existent kind of like urges and like abusive tendencies. It's fantastic. It's great. I do have a big caveat with this movie, and it's the fact that the actress who plays the main character, Shelley
Mhm.
Duvall, was absolutely abused and mistreated during the entire filming. For some reason, Kubrick thought that a movie that was meant to call out on spousal abuse, which was a great idea to actually
Yeah.
abuse the actress while on shoot. And that is despicable and horrible and needs to be talked about a lot more. But she does a
She
fantastic
is
job.
great. Although,
She
oddly
has.
enough, this is why the
Hmm,
Razzie Awards are always terrible. She was nominated for a Razzie for worst
yeah.
supporting actress or something, but I don't get. She's
Surprising to
great.
me. I
She's
I
great.
do not
Hmm.
understand. I think she's
Hmm.
fantastic in it. Even like outside the moments where clearly she was put in
Yeah.
distress, like on purpose, just to get her actual
Hmm.
reaction, which happened a lot throughout the
Yeah.
movie. I think the quiet moments she does
Hmm.
fantastically because she feels like someone who's scared to even open her
Yeah.
mouth. And I think that like really sells. Like she feels like she's always at like he's about to boil
Hmm.
and she's like managing and trying to prevent that from
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
She like tiptoes around her husband really well. And I feel like she really sells her character fantastically in this movie. And after all, even though he's the character that we follow,
Hmm.
her and her son are the main characters of this movie. They're really the protagonists, the ones who are being, subjected to
Hmm.
this life. And it's a
Yeah.
fantastic movie. It's a great psychological horror. I love the weird filmic choices that were made to like make you feel
Hmm.
uneasy. Great, amazing performances from everyone involved.
I
And
get.
apart from
Yeah.
the actual abuse that happened on set, like fuck yeah, this is a
I mean,
great movie.
from the set alone is goddamn just
Mm,
feels sinister.
it's
It's a great design.
gorgeous,
Oh, the hotel is a
gorgeously
fantastic
iconic.
design, and like you're saying,
Mm,
it is pioneering as well. Like the Danny on his little
mm,
tricycle and the camera manages to fall. The camera falls around every corner.
yeah, yeah.
Was like a new technique that Kubrick thing, and like you're saying, with Kubrick, he is famously known to being
Mm,
excruciatingly difficult director to work with. I remember there
yes.
was also another story with Tom Cruise on Eyes Wide Shut, how he made
Mm,
Tom Cruise walk
yeah.
through a door over 100 times because he wasn't doing it right, and
Yes, because he wanted him to.
yeah,
Yeah, in Ice White Shut, the
yes,
thing goes that like he basically made them do it over and over again until they were basically like at the edge of falling
yeah,
asleep of
mhm,
exhaustion because that's what he wanted to
yes,
get from them.
yes.
But instead of asking that from the
Hmm.
start, he just made them do it. I think it was Michael
Yes,
McDowell.
Clockwork
Am I
Orange,
getting
of
his
course,
first?
almost
Yeah.
went blind because of what they were
Yes.
doing with that stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
He had
Jeez.
an interview later in
Hmm.
life when he was asked to talk about Kubrick, and he said, "I don't think he's a great
Hmm.
man because he was amazing in a lot of ways, but he lacked an essential aspect, and that was his humanity." And I feel like that is very telling
Yes.
from someone that worked with
Hmm.
him. So
Yeah.
yeah, but then again, you have people like
Hmm.
Spielberg who absolutely swear
Yeah.
by him, and they're
Have
very good
you
friends.
ever
So
seen the
yes,
documentary Room 237?
I have
Right, so
not.
it's not
I have
it's
not.
I've seen
Would you
parts of
recommend
it,
parts of
I
it. Okay,
this?
so
think.
it's
Hmm,
mainly it's not really a documentary about the it has elements of the making of the film, but it's really about the
hmm,
reading of the film and
hmm,
all the it's about kind of different essayists and how they sort of look into it. Look, I have flaws with the
hmm.
documentary. I think some of the arguments
Yeah.
behind them are really reachy and weak, and I was like, if I wrote this in film studies,
Hmm.
my marker would have been like, shut the
You
fuck
would.
up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
This is
some of it's a
bullshit.
bit
Get
too
out of here.
far, but some of it is useful reading.
Yeah.
Like, also it
Hmm.
being an allegory for like the genocide of
Hmm.
the Native Americans. I think that's actually a really
Yeah.
interesting reading of it, as having Jack as like the
Yeah. I've heard.
Jack is the Europeans, and then of course Danny and oh, forgot her name there, Shelley Duvall is
I've heard that reading
uh
before. I've also heard like the whole like it being like a metaphor for like you said like the conquering what quote unquote the manifest destiny
mm-hmm,
thing and
mm-hmm.
stuff. Yeah, because like the whole built on an
Yes,
ancient
it is
burial
built on that
ground kind of
stuff, yeah.
thing.
And
Like
Danny's wearing like a jumper.
yeah,
I know
because
Danny's wearing a jumper with like Native Americans on it,
a
and
lot of the
yes, the
patterning
patterning
in
as
the
well.
on the
Mm-hmm,
floor also very
mm-hmm,
reminiscent of like
mm-hmm.
native weaving and stuff.
There's
Yeah,
also
no,
stuff
I have read
about like
that
Stanley
about
Kubrick's
that.
the one that filmed the moon landing and all that nonsense. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But there was one that I remember,
Yes,
and I thought
yes.
this was a great like
Yeah.
someone noticed this, and I thought it was fantastic, right? Because in the book, Stephen King, Jack drives he drives a red Beetle or a red car to the
Yes.
hotel, but in the film
Hmm,
it's a yellow one, right?
hmm, hmm,
And in the scene where Halloran journeys back to the hotel to save Danny, um,
hmm.
there is a truck has crashed into a car on the road, and the car is a red Beetle, and it's basically Stanley
Mm.
Kubrick's visual fuck you to Stephen King, saying, see your
Yeah,
original
be
work.
like,
Here's a truck, and I've just smashed through it. I ain't following your
yeah,
book."
yeah.
Oh
I
my
thought that was
god.
brilliant. I loved that.
I feel like that is something that like someone like Game Theory would take
Mhm.
and like do a whole video on
Yeah.
like how he's actually dead already because you can see the car that
Uh-huh.
crashed and
Uh-huh.
everything that's happening. It's like afterlife or
Uh-huh.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, that's a good visual
Uh-huh.
metaphor as fuck you. Poor Stephen King. But yeah, no, I think this is like one of those cases where like the adaptation changing things elevated the
Mm-hmm.
work, at least for me, and
Yeah.
it's a great horror movie. It's fantastic. It's something to be studied. The filmmaking in it, the color theory, like the acting, everything is fantastic and stunning. And I am a big fan of it. Big fan.
Yeah.
So that was The
Well
Shining.
done. I love The Shining. I think
So
it's
yes,
fantastic.
your honorable
And
mentions
well,
now, Lewis.
that was also one of my own mentions. But I'm gonna go. So first of
Hmm.
all, I want to talk about Cinema Paradiso. Then that's a lovely,
Yes.
beautiful love letter to cinema, but it's also about nostalgia as well and looking back in your past and sort of having to connect with your past in a very interesting way. I really love Cinema Paradiso. Um,
Beautiful soundtrack.
Beautiful soundtrack, and it's one of your girlfriend's favorite films, which you haven't seen, which is strange.
Yes.
Love Cinema
Yes.
Paradiso. I mentioned Akira earlier. I think Akira is one of the best anime films ever made.
Mm,
Of course, like I said, heavily inspired by Blade
yeah.
Runner, but also going like nuclear with it, with all the stuff in it.
The animation
Uh huh.
in this film is stunning. Like the animation work and like the level of care, because like this was back when like animation wasn't done
Uh huh.
digitally. Like most of this movie was
Hand
animated
draw.
by
It's
hand
crazy.
and frame painted,
Uh
and
huh.
it's
Yeah.
incredible the amount of detail that you have in every shot. Like oh, it's
Yeah.
stunning. Sorry,
No.
I won't go into it, but
Yeah.
great movie,
I
great
saw that.
movie.
I got to see that in cinema, which is fantastic, and the whole 4K restoration thing was
Lucky,
great. Come and
lucky.
See by Elim Klimov, which is. Have you ever heard of
Mhm.
Come and See?
I have
Which is
not.
this?
Tell me
Okay.
about this.
It's a World War Two film from like the Russian
Mm,
perspective. It's set in Belarus, obviously, but that was the Soviet Union at the time.
mm,
Um,
mm,
but there's stuff in this film. I remember we were talking about Quiet on the Western Front, how I think the main flaw with that film was it wasn't gritty
mm,
enough to be a really effective war film. This
mm. The
is
remake one, yeah.
extremely dark, and some of it goes to pure horror film levels of like
Yeah, so very anti-war
very
then.
it's a very
Yeah.
anti-war film, very unsettling at points, and really, really powerful. I mean, there's the whole sequence which starts with this whole air bombing and then goes all the way through this whole like bog, and it's the main character,
Mm.
Flora. He's just a boy in his. You're watching basically innocence be corrupted over time, and he like physically
Oh,
ages
I do know this
through
movie.
war over the course of the film. It's absolutely brilliant, and there's some of it's just a visual, just astounding
Mm.
how they put this stuff to film. It's really brilliant. So come and see another absolutely fantastic. I was going to talk about this film the other week, but I talked about Mulholland Drive and I was like a bit David Lynched out, and I referenced
Yeah.
it last week. But Blue Velvet is this brilliant psychosexual thriller that has these
Yeah.
brilliant things about the duality of human existence in itself, between this
Mm.
dark depraved nature within everyone, which is covered up by just smiles and beautiful suburban life. Absolutely brilliant. Blue
Yeah.
Velvet. I mean, every other week I don't know what my favorite David Lynch film is. Is it Firewalk with Me? Is it Blue Velvet? Is it Mulholland Drive? I don't know. Um,
Let's
when
keep
me and
going.
Kyle did
Let's jump from one to
our
the other.
recommendation video,
Yeah.
I obviously talked about one of my favorite Scorsese films, The King of Comedy. Adore that film. The
Mm.
real Joker film, if you
Yes.
ask me.
If
Uh-huh.
if any of our audience members watched The Joker and generally
Mhm.
enjoyed it, please just watch this film because it's like what if that was
Yes,
better in
yes.
every way.
He also did Last
So
Temptation of Christ in
yes.
this decade as well in '88, I think.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
and a great humanistic take on the Christ mythology, which I think is actually really
Mm.
beautiful, but also was really controversial at the time, which I don't understand because it's a film all about love. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, To Live and Die in LA.
Depictions of religious figures
To
always
Live
tend to
and
be
Die in
controversial, though,
LA by
regardless.
William Friedkin, I think it was 1985,
Yes.
has this brilliant villain performance from a young Willem Dafoe, and it's about trying to track this art thief, and it's about revenge, and it's just so cool. It's just this great sort of neo-noir type film that's a thriller, and it has this incredible chase scene, which I have no idea how they filmed, going like through the motorways of LA, but going down the wrong way. Oh my god, it's brilliant. Please watch To Live and Die in LA. Brilliant film. And I was going to talk about Do the Right Thing, one of Spike Lee's earlier films in 1989. One of his best films, one of his most important and still strikingly relevant films today, which should have won Best Picture back in '89 because it's that good instead of, I think it was like Driving Miss Daisy one or something stupid like that. But it's a film in which race relations
Yeah.
are explored in the US, and like I said, it's still timeless today. It's all, and I have this whole like thing about everybody just like constantly perpetuating hate onto a different subset of aspects of the human race, and it's just brilliant. And I think everyone needs to see Do the Right Thing, because I think it's that important.
See, Spike Lee's filmography is something that I need to re-explore, especially after how much I enjoyed BlacKkKlansman.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's very much an out there director. Like, not only just in like the thematics that he explores are very like close to him, but like the visuals that he employs, like the way he films things, like it's really interesting. So I really need to
Do
go
the Right
through
Thing.
his backlog.
Absolutely,
we could do a whole episode on Spike Lee.
Do the Right Thing is just it's brilliant. It has this whole like metaphoric backdrop of this super hot summer day, and and then just from the morning everything's just getting hotter and hotter, and the tensions between the Italian Americans and the black community are just getting hotter and hotter. Brilliant stuff. I mean, from the cast, you got like Spike Lee, Giancarlo Esposito, Samuel Jackson, all in there. John Turturro, brilliant cast. Martin Lawrence is in there in one of his early works. Oh my god, there's just so many people in it.
Oh wow.
But
that's a hell of a cast.
The reason I'm not doing Do the Right Thing is because it is well known, to be fair, and it has a lot of discourse over it. So instead, I do a film which I don't think any of you've heard of, and it's Brian De Palma's Blowout, 1981. With John Travolta, right?
I know Brian De Palma. I have never heard of Blowout.
You've never heard of Blowout?
Nah.
Yes, I know. I'm not doing Scarface, guys, which a lot of people would consider one of his best works. No, I would say Blowout is his best film. And John Travolta's best performance, a John Travolta performance that is challenging and just really, really effective. So, it's very much inspired by Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up, which that film was about a photographer believing he's found a murder in a picture he's captured and then becoming obsessed about that and zooming in. But the more you zoom into the picture, the less you actually see. And so, very good. So we have this film Blowout, which instead follows a movie sound recordist who has accidentally recorded like a car crash and a car accident, which might actually be a murder. Or is it just a car crash? That's the question that the film poses. But so you have Jack, who's played by John Travolta, who, as I said, he's a sound recordist. At the beginning of the film, he's doing like B-movie horrors, and none of the women are doing the correct scream for the scene, and they're getting frustrated with it. And then he goes out one night and just goes for a walk, and like I said, he witnesses this car crash and records it. But then in playing back the audio, he then discovers secrets within it, which I'm like, it's so genius. It's genuinely, if anyone's interested in sound design or sound in cinema, check out Blowout, because the way they play with sound and the way it's manipulated is absolutely brilliant. I think it's just one of the most engaging thrillers of the era. There is this whole climactic sequence in which, because there's also this John Lithgow plays this like killer in it, and there's this whole sequence about having to like, they have to bait him out with someone, and then them having to like chase him down through like this mad parade. Look, I will say this about the 80s, right? I miss so much of this filmmaking stuff. Because they make me ask the question, how do they film this stuff? You know, you have the crazy chase scene in Blues Brothers. You have the crazy chase scene in this where you have cars going through like parades.
This is the thing. Most of the time, they just did it. They just fucking did it.
I was talking about with...
They were like,
they went pockets.
Like I said, with To Live and Die in LA, I was like, how did they film all this stuff through LA and going through all this traffic and things like that? Yeah. And I love that stuff in the 80s and the 70s, what they did with these car chases. Like, really, really just realistic and intense and just brilliantly filmed stuff that is like...
There's also, like, some physicality to it.
So much
like, you don't even get with, like even directors, that use a lot of, like, practical stuff. Like, even people like Michael Bay that do their practical explosions and stuff. Their films don't have that same raw physicality just because... There's something about the action scenes that has like imperfections to it. They don't feel choreographed because there's things in them that aren't aesthetic. Like when there's a car chase, like the car might not do the ref properly and like it stumbles a bit before it starts. Like there's things like that that just like add really to like the grittiness of like those action scenes in the 80s. So like I know what you mean. Like there's something really physical and raw
and the rawness because
those.
Like they used the obviously traditional 35mm film, and that's why it adds to that sort of raw feeling.
Let's not discount that, of course.
No, of course not. But yeah, there also there's this whole element about truth in it. Of course, I mean, you're dealing with like what is true with the sound, and is it just I'm just hearing this stuff. But also like politicians and things taking, Jack. They understand that Jack's recorded stuff, and maybe he needs to be taken out himself because he has evidence that he could figure out what's going on. And there's this whole sort of espionage and political intrigue stuff. I just love Blowout, and I will say, I really hope you guys watch this because I genuinely think both of you will love this film. Well, I hope you do. But the ending to Blowout is one of the best endings I've seen in such a long time. It's genius. It's genuinely genius, and it's twisted and it's messed up, and it's so brilliant and dark. And I just think Blowout. When I saw Blowout, like a few months ago, I was like, I can't believe this isn't more famous than it actually is, and I can't believe of Brian De Palma's filmography, it's just one that isn't up there. Like even Obsession, which in the 70s, which I love Obsession, even though it has very, very clear riffs off Vertigo, is more famous than this. I'm like, this really deserves more credit, because although this also kind of has inspiration from the things like Blow Up, it has its own identity, it has its own meaning, and it has its own brilliant twists and turns, and a really great villain performance from John Lithgow. And it is, to me, John Travolta's best performance. Like I was like, wow, John Travolta's really fucking good in this. And maybe just because from like the 90s, like post Pulp Fiction, he kind of got like memed and did really bad films and whatnot. But yeah.
This was like before he started doing terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting because like Brian De Palma, like I've heard about most of his films, and this is one that I've never heard talked about like before. Like no one really elevates this in like within his filmography and stuff. And he's got like a lot of good hits, and even films that I haven't watched of his that I've heard about, but like never heard about Blowout. That might be a hidden gem.
No, it's absolutely a hidden gem. I really want you guys to go see Blowout and tell me about it, because I mainly also want to see what your opinions are of the ending, because the ending to me it's just so clever. I just thought it was so intelligent and really fucked up, and I loved that.
We might have to do like a special episode where we just like for 5 minutes get together and say, hey, what did you think about Blowout? Just a continuation.
But also, if you haven't seen Blow Up, watch Blow Up as well, because I love Blow Up, and that's one of my favorite films.
Oh yeah, sorry, Blow Up.
Yeah, there's Blow. I mean, look, there's like a weird Blow trilogy. There's Blow Up, Blow Out, and there's just Blow with Penelope Cruz and Johnny Depp. So all very different films.
Yes,
but
I'm not going to make this.
Yes, that will round off our 80s discussion of the episode. So we had Blowout, Blade Runner, Back to the Future, all the bees, The Shining, Ghostbusters, and Naked Gun. That was it. I just trying to remember what Kyle's first film was there. Yes. But yes, those are all our picks.
That's a
great variety of like thrillers and comedies and action adventure and all sorts of great stuff.
The 80s, man.
They had great shit. They had it all.
Great
and
movies.
Plus all their honourable mentions. Just go on a Mad 80s binge. You'll love it. All fantastic films. But now it is time for review for Cocaine Bear.
And now, reviews.
So this is Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear is directed by Elizabeth Banks and written by Jimmy Warden, and stars Alden Ehrenreich, Kerry Russell, O'Shea Jackson Jr., and many, many others. This is, and actually, sadly, this is one of Ray Liotta's last films. Yes, it is a real shame. But yeah, so the plot of Cocaine Bear, which is loosely based off a true story, and I mean loosely based.
Yeah, that's like what I wanted to ask, because I know about the news article talking about like the whole Cocaine Bear thing, because it became a meme, and I watched the trailer when the film was coming out, because my girlfriend sent it to me, and I thought, this looks horrible. So. Was I right or was I wrong?
Well, let me get into the plot, right? So when I say loosely based, some of the events of this did happen. So basically, there's this cargo plane filled with cocaine, and a bunch of the packages fell into this Georgian forest in which a bear in real life did eat it, but sadly didn't go insane. I say sadly.
No, he just died.
No,
it just died.
It just died because it ate all the cocaine.
Yeah.
But yes, so
it's quite upsetting.
That's a lot of cocaine.
Yeah, so that's the true version. But here we have once again the cocaine has dropped in the Georgian forest, but a bear eats the drugs, and it goes on an extremely violent rampage and quickly becomes addicted to coke. And all these groups of different people, including Kerry Russell, trying to look for her daughter who's skipped school with this other kid, and as well as the cops and drug cartel, or should I say just drug dealers, are going in to try and find the cocaine. So that's pretty much the premise. And like genre-wise, look, it's
like
going
a comedy.
Yes, it is a comedy, action comedy, right? And it's obviously from the title and from the trailer, it's obviously trying to, from that, it's just trying to draw people in from the silliness and stupidity of the premise, right? And it's trying to be very, very B-movie. That's what obviously it's aiming for.
Yes.
The problem for me with Cocaine Bear is that it feels just so clunkily put together. It's a film where there's just far too many characters. There's far too many groups of people, and it's trying to they're all just trying to riff and do different styles of comedy. You have the kids who curse. You have, the drug dealer is in one sensitive because his girlfriend's just died. And then you have the cop and
just
stuff.
from the just from the trailer itself, they introduced at least 10 different people and killed a bunch of them on screen on the trailer. Which, by the way, trailers, stop revealing shit about your plot, please. Just give us an idea. That's it.
Also, with the whole B-movie thing, I feel like at times the film actually kind of also takes itself a bit too seriously, weirdly enough. There's this whole bit where the bear is coming after one of the kids and one of the park rangers who've climbed up some trees, and the music is so heavy and really serious, Hans Zimmer drums-esque, where it's and it's trying to be a horror film, and I'm like, why? This isn't. It feels really wrong, and also, like I said, it was really clunky. It feels just like a bunch of scenes strung together in order to here's some comedy. The bear is kind of missing in a bunch of it. It's very weird, and maybe it's because it's a full CGI bear, and I understand that costs a lot of money. But also, the problem is...
but they could have...
What are you saying?
They could have gone with the whole idea of a more Coen's brother kind of take on it, with introducing a bunch of local characters, introducing the drug dealers, and then developing their stories, with the cocaine bear just being a central thing that happens to
and
them,
I think that's, like you're saying, I think that's what it's going for. But also, like I said, it has all these scenes just strung together and clunkily put and edited together in order to make it seem like a lot's going on. And that could be good if the scenes were funny. That could be good. But the main problem is that it's not really that funny, and also
it ain't no Naked Gun.
There's a weird lack of energy in the film from a film with cocaine in the title. There's a lot of scenes where it just there's no energy or rhythm to the comedy or the scenes or the acting. It's just we're just saying the dialogue, and it's just really run-of-the-mill stuff. And then when you get to the third act, the finale itself is just so lazily done. It's we're just in this edge of this cave thing, and this guy's got a gun, and he's give me the drugs, and then it's a wee scuffle, and then it feels really kind of lazy. I will say there's one really funny scene, like you're saying, Gonzalo, in the trailer. The whole sequence where one of the park rangers is she's very accident prone and then causes a lot of accidents. That physical stuff's quite funny. And then dealing with the whole ambulance team and trying to get out of the forest. That scene itself is very funny. I think that's the highlight of the film, which they've put in the trailer. So you could probably just watch that scene online. But I don't know. Cocaine Bear just wasn't that fun. I was expecting it to be very B-movie. I was expecting it to be kind of trashy and silly and fun.
Yeah, kind of Sharknado-y, kind of
but it just isn't. It doesn't embrace its B-movie quality. It doesn't embrace the silliness of the title. It doesn't just
because that's the thing for me, for a movie for a movie like that to work with such a silly premise and stuff, you really have to go full in. Kyle was talking about the things that he liked about Naked Gun earlier, and at the 80s episode, and just go all the way.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to get that laughter, you have to go all the way. If you just do a little joke and that's it, and take yourself too seriously, you're not really gonna get that same feeling of outrageousness of like what the heck is going on, you know? And that's really what causes like things like the movies like fucking Sharknado to be
Yeah.
fun to
Yeah.
watch. Like it's so over the top to the point that even though the writing is terrible and the filmmaking is very questionable, you're sticking around because it's entertainingly like over the
Yeah,
top,
it's
you know?
it's ridiculous, and I just like, why isn't this more ridiculous? Yeah, there is like I said, the best scene in the film is the ridiculous, like over the top. The bear is chasing up with an ambulance, jumping in an ambulance, killing everyone. That stuff's fun, and I just wanted more of that. But it's just a lot of the time you're spending it with these characters aren't really that interesting, aren't that funny, and that's really the problem with Cocaine Bear. I'd probably give this a. I guess I can't get too mad because it's called Cocaine Bear, but also it didn't really embrace its qualities.
It knows what it
I'll give
is.
4. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I think there's a lot funnier stuff out there.
See, at this point, it's less about the numeral score and more like just don't go watch
Yeah,
it.
it's like I can't really. I'm not.
Like it doesn't matter
it's
what I
not
give
like,
it, just don't
it's
go
not
watch
like
it.
Ant-Man the Wasp where that actually like annoyed me and was like just whatever. Sure. It's a 4 out of
Like
10.
it's not actively hurtful.
Yes, it's not actually. It's
it's just
I would
boring.
want this film to succeed more, because hopefully we'd get more ridiculous things. I mean, look, Universal is weirdly going for this. Like they came with Violent Night a few months ago with the Santa killing everyone, and that premise was. I think that film was much stronger than Cocaine Bear, but I'm kind of enjoying Universal going weird and just doing these mad original IPs. Although some of them
It's
aren't.
what happens
yeah.
when you're running out of everything.
It's just like-
You just gotta throw shit at the wall.
I just wish some of this stuff was a bit stronger. But yes, that will round off today's episode. So thank you very much, Gonzalo, for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, Kyle, as well.
Pleasure as always.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So yes, that was our 80s topic and a review for Cocaine Bear. On next week's episode, we will be doing a full spoiler-filled and spoiler-free review for Creed 3, the next chapter in the Creed saga, or perhaps end of the trilogy. I'm not too sure, but yes, we'll be talking about Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut on next week's show. Yes. But yes, we just gave our opinion on all those 80 films and Cocaine Bear. But at the end of the day, those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.